If you are an entrepreneur looking to start or launch a food product in Tucson, I've got just the resource for you. Liz Pocock is the CEO of Startup Tucson and has helped grow Startup to serve over 3,500 entrepreneurs a year, receiving national recognition for building inclusive ecosystems and funding support for its programming. She was a Tucson 40 Under 40 recipient in 2019, 2020 Tucson Women of Influence Rising Star winner, and recognized in the 2021 list of Next Gen Leaders by Biz Tucson. Today, Liz and I are going to tell you about all the wonderful resources Startup Tucson offers entrepreneurs. We're also going to talk about how thinking about your business as an experiment will help you reduce stress and anxiety, leading to greater results to your business. We're also going to share some success stories of the businesses that have come through Startup Tucson's Food Forward program. Welcome to the No Hesitations podcast, the show where restaurant leaders learn tools, tactics, and habits from the world's greatest operators. I'm your host, Kristen Marvin, with Solutions by Kristen. I've spent the last 2 decades in the restaurant industry and now partner with restaurant owners to develop their leaders and scale their businesses without wasting time and energy so they can achieve work-life balance and make more money. You can now engage with me on the show and share topics you'd like to hear about, leadership lessons you want to learn, and any feedback that you have. Simply click the link at the top of the show notes, and I'll give you a shout out on a future episode. Thanks so much for listening, and I look forward to connecting. Hi, Liz. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today to share not only the incredible work that you're doing in the community around helping entrepreneurs like myself start and launch their businesses, but just the way that you are running your organization at Startup Tucson. I really, since I moved to town, when I first got here, I was really trying to build community, and I was kind of looking for the best of the best in town to surround myself with and say, like, who are the heavy hitters? Who's disrupting business right now in this industry? And your name just kept coming up over and over and over again. And I don't even remember if you knew, but like, I was like emailing you, like, can we meet for coffee? Can we meet for coffee? Can we meet for, you're like, who the hell is this person? Like, leave me alone. But anyway, your name came up quite a few times. And so I was super excited to finally meet you. And, and I know I've told you the story, but when I first moved here and was really trying to build community and just learn how to start my business and find out what other people were doing, Startup was really the first organization that I learned about. And, the programming that your team was doing at the time, every Thursday downtown was, I was so excited to go down there every single week and start to meet people and see the same people. And it was like, I would get up early mornings Thursday and just be so excited to drive 30 minutes across town to just share a cup of coffee with people, because what you were cultivating in that, just brief 1 hour time was just this really cool entrepreneurial spirit and network and innovative thinking. And it felt like home for me, which was really, really awesome. So thanks for that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely.
I love to hear that. It's great. It's great when the programs work.
Yeah. And you guys do so many, we're going to talk about it throughout the course of the episode today, but you do so many different exciting things. And we're going to talk about how you and your team really pull all that off. But I'm always like, I love your communication. I love the frequency. I love how you're always really good at taking feedback from us mentors that are in the organization or people that are attending your programs or classes. And I just feel like you guys are constantly building and building and building. And it's just super exciting. So keep up the great work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I hope my team feels good about constantly building.
Love it. Well, let's talk about what Startup Tucson is, and then specifically, what programs, you've got so many wonderful things going on, but what program you'd like to highlight that would speak directly to this audience of listeners?
Yeah, sure. So Startup Tucson is a nonprofit that works to serve entrepreneurs in Southern Arizona. While we do serve all of Southern Arizona, most of our entrepreneurs are from Tucson or the surrounding Pima County area. We serve about 400 plus entrepreneurs a year. More broadly, through our 10 West Impact Festival, we probably see closer to like 3,000 individuals from the larger innovation ecosystem, whether that's mentors or supporters or investors or kind of like generally. So our audience is a lot bigger than that, but about 400 people are either working on starting something or have already started something and are looking for support and community. And so that's kind of like the numbers of who we serve. We are industry agnostic, meaning we serve all types of entrepreneurs. So even though startup is in our name and that word can trigger, images of Silicon Valley and Meta and X, as we now call it, and all of those sort of like high scale super companies, we really think of entrepreneurship as much broader than that, and serve, people that want to do a side hustle all the way up to they want to seek investment and everywhere in between. And so the organization's core is basically education and technical assistance and business support. So we run formal programming, which looks like, workshops and networking events. And those workshops could range from 2 hours to 10 weeks, up to, a lot of one-to-one support. So mentoring directly to founders and entrepreneurs around getting their business goals on paper, setting up, initial business plan. And we base everything around lean, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit later. But the idea that, you shouldn't be so afraid to start. The general business plan is, pages and pages and pages. And the second you finish it, it's outdated. And so we use a model called the Lean Business Model Canvas that has a number of other tools associated with it, lean experimentation, all of these other things that really teach founders and aspiring founders to iterate quickly and kind of like get things out the door. And so we ourselves follow those same principles as an organization. So that's why we tend to have lots of different types of programming. Mm-hmm. We're always trying to learn what's going on in the ecosystem, what founders are struggling with, and then come up with sort of programmatic solutions that stay ahead of that. So that we can just continue to support people as they're trying to go build what they are passionate about.
I love it. And will you speak a little bit to the Food Forward program that caters directly to people that want to get in kind of the food and beverage space in town?
Yeah. So a few years ago, I'll give a little bit of background. You want me to give some background?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Okay. So like I said, industry agnostic. So we have served founders throughout the ecosystem for, years. And as we see trends in a certain space, and so one of those spaces was food, we started to see more and more food entrepreneurs coming through our programming. And we had some formal programming, but they were, alongside other founders. And we were finding that a lot of them had the same struggles, same concerns, especially when it came to food products and building a food product business. They all had issues with the health department and what did it mean to get their first round of permits? And did they need a cottage license or this other kind of license? And how do they get a commercial kitchen? And how many hours did they need in a commercial kitchen? And kind of like everything that goes around what it looks like to build that sort of business. And so as we saw more momentum in that space, we decided we really wanted to build some programming that was specific for them. So we got a USDA grant to help support specifically food founders that were looking to build products that they wanted to bring into farmers markets and beyond. And so we've been running that program for 3 years now. We've graduated 70 founders from that program. We are looking at expanding that. The initial focus of the grant was to get people ready for farmers markets, but we know that that's only going to take an entrepreneur so far, and to really build a sustainable food business in the product space, they really need to be looking at what it looks like to have, third-party partners in that, whether that's wholesale or selling online out of state. And there's all different sorts of things that come with different challenges that come with scaling at that point. So we're looking at expanding and providing more support in that space. But each cohort is 10 weeks long. People come in with the recipes themselves. We don't help them. They have to know what they want to build, and have the food product itself. But then we'll give them all the business pieces alongside that, connect them with those specialty resources, connect them with mentors. Part inspiration, we'll bring in some success stories from either prior cohorts or Tucson generally, that have done really well in the space to share their sort of best practices, what they wish they would have known, all of those different pieces. And then they end with a showcase in front of about 200 people where they can showcase the product and get feedback from potential buyers and potential customers. And then they go from there. And they can continue with coaching with us, at least quarterly, mentorship, additional support services as they continue to grow.
I love it. I love that program. I've got a couple clients that are in the process right now of creating their product. One's creating the product and getting ready to launch. The other one has been in business for about a year now. And the farmers markets are so amazing here because they're year round, and there's just it's just such a great proof of concept because we don't really have food halls here yet. I know some are coming, which I'm really, really excited about. But it's a very low risk way to get some really great feedback. But I do find, and love that you brought this up, that they don't really know where to go from there, right? And Tucson is incredibly seasonal. And so a lot of the conversations I have is, how do I make this sustainable during the summertime when everybody leaves and our population drops significantly? College is out, snowbirds are gone. A lot of people leave locals because it's too hot, right? So that's a, online marketing presence, that online ordering, those wholesale, that's super, super important to their sustainability. So I love that you guys are working on that. Hey there, podcast friends. I hope you're enjoying these impactful conversations and leadership insights I'm bringing you each week. Before we dive back into today's episode, I want to take a moment and reach out and ask a small favor that would go a long way in supporting the show. If you've been loving the content I'm providing, please take a moment to leave a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Not only does it make my day, but it also plays a pivotal role in helping the show grow. Your reviews boost my visibility, attract new listeners, and encourage exciting guests to join me on the mic. So if you want to be part of my show's growth journey, hit that review button and let me know what you think. Thanks a million for being awesome listeners. Do you have a success story or two from the program that you'd like to share?
Yeah, sure. So two of our sort of more recent ones, we have Montreal Bagels. So they started in Food Forward. They had a concept for bringing Montreal style bagels to Tucson.
What's a Montreal style bagel?
It's prepared differently. It's like thinner.
Okay.
And it's like sort of, rounder is the wrong word. A steel rounder.
Okay.
There's a different way that it's actually made. Okay. It's actually made in like a pizza oven is not the full term of what it is, but it's prepared differently, and the way that it's turned is done differently. It just tastes a lot different. And so there's this Montreal style bagel that is that they had a vision of bringing here to Tucson, and they came through the program. And since then, they have been at a number of farmers markets. They're taking pre-orders. They sell out almost every single week. And they are now at a place where they're looking to find a location to move. They've been doing everything on a cottage license, and they're outgrown their kitchen and backyard oven and everything that went into that. And so they're now ready to kind of take their next step and look at kind of scaling and what that will mean for them. So we're proud of them.
Yeah.
And then Nana Sylvia Salsa is brother and sister. She does a lot of the preparing and everything. They have a family recipe that they've had for years. That's a specific type of different way of preparing salsa, more traditional Mexican recipe that they wanted to bring forward. And she just saw a gap in the market that there wasn't a lot of locally prepared fresh salsa that you could buy. And so she has moved out of her cottage license into a commercial kitchen and is now preparing and selling out at farmers markets as well. Nice. So we're proud of both of those. They're, sort of earlier stage, but really gaining momentum. And we'll see what happens for them next.
I love it. That's great. I know you mentioned earlier, about the lean canvas. And I will say when I joined one of your first accelerated fundamentals from a mentorship perspective, the lean canvas was completely new to me. And, I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I love about what you're doing with Startup is Your team seems to be incredibly engaged, and there's so many different programs available, and you're constantly just rolling out new things. Like, I feel like you're a total expert when it comes to the change management process and empowering your team. Will you talk a little bit about kind of your this mindset of experimentation, and dive a little bit deeper into what the lean canvas is and how it's really helped you be successful in your role, and how it's helped Startup Tucson be successful?
Yeah. So the lean canvas is basically a one-page business model. So, or business plan canvas. We kind of say paired with your budget, it's your roadmap to what you're doing next. And like I mentioned before, the challenge with traditional business plans is like the second you finish them, they're out of date, right? The lean canvas is really meant to be something that's really iterative. So you think this is your audience. Now you go run an experiment, learn more about that audience. Is that still correct? If not, pull that sticky note off there, change what's on there, and run another experiment. So it was designed, I think, originally as a tool for like fast tech iteration. It's like it's very much from the tech space, but it's been modified over the years to just be an effective tool for anybody that wants to learn how to do sort of like fast innovation and like go to launch. And then even post launch, just like constantly be looking at your channels and who you're serving, and are you still serving them the way you want to? And so that's what we use the canvas, but kind of more generally experimentation to do. I think it's can be really typical for a nonprofit to overbuild. They get like kind of stuck in their head of, this has to be perfect when I roll it out. And so they spend a really long time. And within that process, they're making a lot of assumptions. They're assuming their audience will come only to a programming that starts at 5 p.m., or they're assuming their audience will only pay this amount of money, or they're assuming their audience wants a 10-week course instead of a 5-week course. And I think it kind of prevents them from moving quickly and discovering more about what their audience really wants and what their audience can gain from certain types of programming and what's being offered. And they kind of get crippled. And so they don't launch, and it takes forever to build things. And this is the same for companies, but for nonprofits especially. And so we always try to say, we want to practice what we preach. So if we're telling startups to do this, we should do this ourselves. And so our team tries to adopt the same approach to program building. We're always experimenting with new things, maybe sometimes a little bit too much. But we're always saying like, well, we liked this. Here's what worked really well about that program. Here's what we didn't like. Here's what we heard. We're always trying to gather feedback from everybody that's in the programs. What did they like? What did they not like? What would they like to see different? And then we'll run it a little bit different the next time. And so we're never, I would say if you come to like any of this, especially the longer programming, like it's never going to be the same from time to time, because we're always finding ways to tweak and change. And I think one of the ways that I hope our team views that is not that like these are failures, but these are ways that we're constantly making improvements. And so it's more of this sort of like improv style, yes, that went really well, and we'd like to do this differently.
Can I ask you,
why?
in terms of the food business, like for Montreal Bagel and Nana's Salsa, would you give an example of maybe something that they would experiment with once they've kind of identified a target audience? And then how long would you suggest that they, experiment before they say, well, this is working or this isn't working? Is there a magic time frame there?
Not necessarily. It kind of depends on what it is that they're doing. But yeah, so some examples for food businesses, we're constantly encouraging people to like experiment on price, right? Especially at farmers markets. Like I think most of the time people come out, they price their product too low, especially if it's specialty product, using heritage ingredients or it's specialty made, or, and that you're selling at a farmer's market versus what you might buy on the grocery store shelf. So if I'm buying a salsa at the grocery store, I need to look a little closer at how much my price is going to be above the salsa that's right next to it. But at a farmer's market where you have that opportunity to tell the story that this is a recipe that came from her grandma and it uses chapultepin, which is like unlike any other salsa that's made here, like, yeah, you can upsell me right then and there for $2 extra, and that changes her profit margins like entirely. So, there's some stuff that's experimenting in real time. Like if I were to price this at $10 for the first hour, how's it selling? And then and that's a little less scientific than some of the maybe like real lean experimentation stuff, which is if you're doing like the true experimentation, you would want to set yourself metrics. Here's the particular assumption I'm making. I'm assuming that people will only buy this if it's, if it has this word on it. If I take this off and run an A/B test with a social media ad, what's the traction on one versus the other? And what am I trying to like prove in that given situation? But in reality, with a lot of our food entrepreneurs, it's a lot more like nuanced than that. And I think we try to help them understand that experiments are more kind of to help them decide which path to go forward. So when you're starting, it's really easy to have lots of people tell you lots of different things, right? Oh, this is such a great bagel. You should really be having it at coffee. Like you should talk to so-and-so and they should have it at a coffee shop. And you should also talk to this market and they should have it on their shelves. And you should also do like these 7 other farmers markets. And you should make sure you're doing a pop-up because people really like pop-ups. Like you can have so many potential paths forward. Yeah. And we find that entrepreneurs can dwell on those paths and like just kind of get to this place of like indecisiveness because everything seems like a good option and they don't know where to start and it's too many things to start with. And so we try to encourage them to like break that down into like what's a smaller chunk that you could test that. So you stop, it either is working and you like it and it gave you some traction and now you're going to pursue it further, or it like was a terrible disaster and you hated the experience of that, whatever that was, and you never want to do that again. Great. You don't have to think about it anymore. Let's now focus on the 3 other potential pathways that you have. So, Nana's, we've been working with them. They thought, the idea that like some of these carnicerias around town, it could make sense for them to have fresh salsa next to, whatever is in there. And they ran a little experiment. They tried it for like 2 weeks. And they found that it didn't sell as much as they thought because the price point was too high based on the pre-prepared salsa that the carniceria itself had in there. Mm-hmm. And they just could never compete on price. So that probably was not going to be their market. And they had like thought about this for a long, like this has been something that we had again and again in coaching calls. Like we really think this might work. We really think this might work. Well, now they tried it and they're like, I don't want to do this. This is not an avenue for us. We're going to totally not worry about that anymore and move on. For Montreal Bagels, one of the things we've been talking about with them is they're at this place where they think they need to scale production, but they're not sure because they take a number of pre-orders and then up until recently, they would just once it was sold out, they would just turn it off. So there was no place for them to gather. Did they have 20 more pre-orders that would have come in if they had the product, or did they have 2?
Yeah.
And so they just turned on a waitlist function that's just going to allow them to collect a lot more data to understand, are they at a point where they need to scale up production, or did they kind of penetrate that existing channel and they just kind of were assuming that they were at this point, but the data is not supporting that. So it's all about these just like little mini experiments all the time.
How do you feel like that mindset of thinking of your business as an experiment really helps business owners reduce stress and anxiety and also be more agile with their business?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about this like indecisiveness, right? Like the more we kind of say the same thing when people come into Startup Tucson, like not every business idea exactly how you envisioned it is going to work. And it's more about like, wouldn't you prefer to know all the answers and get as much information as you can have so that you can make a calculated decision on your risk versus like sort of operating this like world of unknown. So every time you can take something off the table by running a little experiment and learning more about your audience or learning more about your partners, whatever it is that you're trying to understand, your marketing, like should you be on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and like probably not. But until you can always say, I keep meaning to get a TikTok. Well, until you like run a little few things on TikTok and see if it gets you any traction, right? Like you just will, it like help. I think by doing these experiments, you're helping understand your business more, understand your customer more, feel solid about your decisions, and then also know what's not going to work so that you can focus on what will work, which ultimately reduces your stress because you're not thinking your to-do list is 50 things long. Now maybe it's only 25.
Totally. And you've got to, I've definitely gone through this over the last almost 2 years with my own business. You figure out what you like spending your time and energy on and what you don't, right? Like social media is a great example of that. In the beginning, I was like, I'm not doing social media. I feel like I'm bragging. I don't know any of the platforms. And now I'm like, okay, I'm going to go all in on LinkedIn, and that's where I'm going to show up consistently. And then maybe I'll dabble in Instagram and Facebook. But it's at the end of the day, I'm like, I just need to stay true to who I am and figure out, like, this is supposed to be fun. Yeah, this is going to be the hardest thing I've ever done in my life for all the right reasons. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got, when you're an entrepreneur, nobody else is going to, really hold you accountable to where you're spending your time and your energy. You have to have the discipline in order to do that. And again, I love this just concept of experimentation, because I feel like it just takes a little bit of the pressure off your shoulders. You're like, I don't have to be married to this. I don't have to be committed. I don't have to throw in a ton of money. I'm just going to try it for a brief moment. And then again, I think it also helps you really understand how to collect feedback, which can be really, really hard. I know that was hard for me at some points in my career. And then build and build and build. I mean, that's really how you build a growth mindset, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think there's a fallacy in, starting your own business as an entrepreneur that, you leave your whatever job and you're going to do pursue your passion 100% of the time. Like 100% of what you do is not going to be exactly what you want to do every day. Right? There's going to be like, maybe when it starts, maybe that's 20%, and then it's going to grow, and 80% is going to be admin or the stuff that you don't like to do. And as you grow, that starts to go back to like getting to do your true passion. And so the more that you can understand exactly like what you said, the things I'm good at, the things that are worth my time versus me, now that I have the money to hire this out or to bring on somebody that complements my skills. And as you do that through experimentation, data collection, talking to people, like you're just so set up so much better for success and actually enjoying what you decided to do because you went to enjoy it in the beginning.
Totally. You are involved in so many things in town. I know I've got your bio. I mean, you're on the board of Tucson City of Gastronomy. Obviously, you're running the Helmet Startup. I think you're on a couple other boards. Are you on like young professionals?
So many, not young professionals anymore.
Okay.
I did professionals for a long time.
Okay.
But I'm on just too many, lots of boards.
What are you seeing? You've got, you've got your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the city. What are you seeing as the biggest challenges for food entrepreneurs outside of the scope of what Startup is offering?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to food products, I think one of our biggest challenges is the operations that support scaling. So, we've got a number of commercial kitchens. Some of those are full, some of those have wait lists, so there's that side. But then there's also the side of like, even if you had investment, we don't have a co-packer. We don't have anything here that larger ecosystems, you have to be a lot more creative in your solutions. And that is just challenging for early stage entrepreneurs. And so I think that's something that we're hoping to work on if we receive additional funding to keep going, pursuing some of these problems. I think there's a lot of opportunity here for specialty products, local products. I mean, you saw Tucson when COVID happened, just support local, like double down on local. And I think if you can tell that compelling story, there's a lot of opportunity for that, both on the restaurant side and on the food product side. I think like everywhere else, there's issues with inflation. There's issues with food costs going up for specialty products like mesquite flour, or like there's some sourcing and supply chain challenges that we continue to have that, a better coordinated ecosystem can help address in some ways. But like some of that stuff, like you got to know a guy that knows a guy. And like, until you know the people to know who to ask the guy, like it's really hard to get access to some of those pieces. But yeah, I think we have this opportunity. There's our city of gastronomy designation. There's food tourism that's increasing. There's tourism in general that's increasing, but all that's balanced by like 3 years ago, our cost of living, if you compared us to other cities, you would have been like hands down in moving to Tucson. Cost of living is great. Now we're experiencing sort of some housing shortages, and we're experiencing some like larger sort of socioeconomic and like workforce challenges that will affect all industries, but in particular service and food. And so, yeah, it's kind of both, right? So yes, and again.
Yeah, absolutely.
On both sides.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody this morning that really wants to start a private catering business and meal prep. And I've heard this from a couple other people in town, and I know that the tamale bill just passed, right? Where you can have a cottage license and sell product out of your home, but they don't have the capacity or space to produce as much as they want, right? Or they're maxed out. So there's at one point, we can help them with efficiencies on, let's talk about if you're batching, as much as you can during your production days, but then when the question keeps coming up, like you mentioned, like where are commissary spaces, or can I talk to restaurant owners that are only open during the day and see if I can rent their space from them at nighttime, or something like that. It is incredibly challenging. So I'm hopeful that we can continue to put some things in place and help these entrepreneurs be able to scale, because we've got to keep the spirit alive in town for sure. There's a lot of great.
And I think as the elevation, so again, opportunity, right? Because in the last week, I've had 3 different conversations with people that want to provide space, but they're not traditional commissary kitchens. So there's spaces that are, they're also looking at as a potential new revenue generating model for them, or they have dead time in their kitchen that they'd love to figure out how to fill. But all of those present their own challenges around, okay, but have you ever worked with entrepreneurs? Do you know what they would need? Like, they're going to need storage. They're going to need this. They're going to need that. Have you thought about how like access will work? Have you thought about like your rules for running a space like that? And so all of those come with their own sets of like learnings that have to happen. Totally. But I do think like the fact that we've had multiple people approach us and say, hey, we want to bring a new tool to the community or a new resource to the community. What do you think the best way to do that is? Or how do you think we should best serve entrepreneurs? Shows that we do have momentum in that space. Yeah. It's just a matter of getting us all coordinated and making sure as they do their own experiments about what will or won't work for them in terms of managing a space like that, we're making sure that we're connecting all those dots.
I love it. And it starts with conversations like these, right?
Exactly. That's great.
Yeah. Well, Liz, thank you so much. I know we could talk about startup all day long and even talk more about 10 West, which is just an absolute blast. I can't wait for that this year. And I love watching the pitch competitions. It's just amazing. And then seeing people walk away with money, it's just incredible. But it's like a little mini Shark Tank, which is so cute.
It's great. Yeah. We had a food company win second prize last year. They they came through actually pre-cohort. They were one of the companies that Ray Sonoran Tea. Yeah. They actually were a Startup Tucson company before we had the food cohort. One of the ones we actually built the model, like, hey, Rachel could have really used this. We didn't have to.
That's amazing.
But she has gone on, we just heard last week, she's starting to distribute into Phoenix. So she is like a definite success story.
Make the big time. That's great.
We're really, really proud of her.
I love it. Would you share a little bit with listeners how, just where they can get a hold of you, startup? They want to learn more about Food Forward. How do they find out more information?
Yeah, our website's a great place, startuptucson.com. If you want to learn about our Impact Conference and Festival, 10west.com. You can email me directly, liz@startuptucson.com. For almost all of our services are free or very low cost. So if you want to start something or have started something and you want some help, even if that's just like a fellow friend to talk things through and chat about and connect you to other resources, I encourage you to come and meet our team.
Absolutely. I love it. Well, I look forward to just continuing our relationship, and I'm just so honored to be a mentor with you guys, and can't wait to see you at the next event for sure. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
You bet. All right, everybody, be sure to share this podcast with any leaders that you know in the industry that could benefit, and we will talk to you next week. Thanks so much for listening.